Welcome to Farming God, a show for those of eclectic spirituality. This is a unique Farming God episode, but I guess that's redundant. All of the shows are unique. For better or worse, there's hardly any continuity. Last month, I went to a talk featuring two women, Ruby and Jessica, who, through Dakota access pipeline resistance, have engaged in a variety of tactics, such as public hearings, encampments, petitions, marches, rallies, civil disobedience, etc. Due to the ultimate inadequacies of these conventional methods to stop pipeline construction, Ruby and Jessica privately launched a campaign aimed at the direct dismantling of the Dakota access pipeline. In July 2017, the two spoke publicly at a press conference about the success they experienced during their 8-month-long property destruction campaign. This included the piercing of empty and exposed pipeline valves, as well as setting fire to pipeline machinery. Since coming forward, their home has been raided by the FBI. The two have been named as individuals in a federal lawsuit, and both are facing future federal indictment. For transparency, the upcoming conversation was originally 2 hours. This is a 30-minute edited version. Edits were made between complete ideas, so I didn't splice different separate ideas together. When we get to the Q&A section, I excluded the first half of the first question because the guy rambled for like 5 minutes before finally asking the question, but the question you don't want to miss. Before beginning, a few ideas came to mind while listening to these women, and you may interpret them how you will. John O'Donohue said, "The duty of privilege is absolute integrity." Joseph Campbell, in Hero with a Thousand Faces, said, "As the rising smoke of an offering through the sun door, due goes the hero, released from the ego." Rabbi Tarfon said, "The work is not yours to finish, but neither are you to take no part in it." I'm not condemning what the woman did, and I'm not really condoning it either, but I'd like to talk about it. Email me, steve@farminggod.com, with any thoughts. With no further delay, let's return to September 29th, where a warm breeze guided attendees into a full community room in Minneapolis. Volunteers greeted new arrivals, and we took our seats. Young adults chatted on plastic chairs, and a grungy crew lounged in the room's back corner, their black jeans squeezed together between the sagging couch cushions. Two women sat off to the side, cross-legged on the ground, sipping water from aluminum bottles. One had blonde hair, a cotton skirt, and leggings. The other, of darker complexion, her hair shoulder length, resting on her t-shirt, resting on her cargo pants. Both of them the same height. A little after 7 o'clock, these two moved to the front of the room. They have done this before. This is Jessica and Ruby.
Hello, Minneapolis. I'm Jessica Resnichak, Ruby Montoya. You want to kick it off? So basically where we are right now in our worlds, Ruby and I's personal worlds, is we're in some heavy stuff right now, actually. So about a month ago, the FBI raided our house. About a month prior to that, Ruby and I had a press conference where we claimed responsibility for an 8-month-long wage of property destruction against the Dakota Access Pipeline across the across the state of Iowa and parts of South Dakota. I think we can maybe, do you want to talk a little bit about what that looked like? So I do want to do a little disclaimer is we're obviously going to share with you our story. And we're obviously open to any questions that you might have after, but there may be some questions if they're too specific that we will not answer at this time. just because we don't need to help the federal government out in indictments at this point. So feel free to ask us any questions, but we're going to stick more to just like what we've learned rather than what we actually did. So.
Yeah, so maybe you all are here because you heard that some people took some fire to machinery and took some blowtorches to some empty valves to the Dakota Access Pipeline, and that's what we did because we exhausted all other avenues of process, petitioning the state to do their jobs and be good stewards to the citizens. In almost every facet of your life, you can see that that is not the case. And avenues of process don't work. So Jess and I took a very practical, very simple approach to stop what needed to be stopped, and unfortunately we were only able to stop it for 90 days, but that was just with 2 people acting correct or acting in a good way, not trying to harm anybody, but seeing that machinery destroys life itself and making that machinery obsolete so that they could not continue their grandmaster plan of death. So that's what we did, and we got there. I think just out of like this, it's not this like grandiose thing. It's more of seeing the basic necessity to respect life, and seeing that unfortunately the government doesn't respect life. You know, the United States was created out of just like a massive disrespect, to put it mildly, and then the corporations like have no regard for anybody. And I'm somebody, I was a preschool teacher before I started fighting the Dakota Access Pipeline, and I'm a very privileged person, and I saw that I was capable to go and fight this pipeline any way that I could. I had no idea that I would end up doing what I did, but I saw the necessity of it, because petitions don't work, public hearings don't work, none of it works. If we just like take a glance back at the Dakota Access Pipeline, none of it worked. So I saw myself as somebody, maybe even a responsible citizen, to do something, and that means sacrifice, so that others in the future maybe possibly can still have clean drinking water. Possibly, we don't know, because the situation is so messed up. But it's important to know that we're normal people, we care a lot, and we're willing to do what is necessary to do the right thing. And part of that is not being idle. Part of that is education, knowing that the government doesn't work, and you gotta do what you gotta do to defend your home and to defend your children.
Yeah, I think it's really important for us to be speaking here specifically, because I know that y'all are going through, I can feel it. I'm not online a lot, but I hear from my friends and comrades that y'all are going through a lot of the same processes that hundreds of thousands of people really went through with the Dakota Access Pipeline, via like the petition and the hearing and the environmental impact statement processes, and now camps are being formed and direct actions are being taken, and we live that too. So I think it's really important for us to share our story in that context here with you all today, because the majority of my struggle was in Iowa. I'm from Iowa. The pipeline runs 15 miles. The Dakota Access Pipeline runs 15 miles from where I was born and where I grew up. And so that was very relevant to me. I did draw a lot of inspiration from the gathering and the encampments up at Standing Rock and the stance that was taken there. And I spent a very limited amount of time there. I went up there twice, or maybe a week at a time, and I thought with the massive amounts of folks up there, I was just such an awe because I've been an activist now pretty solidly for about 6 years, and what you always hope as an activist, sometimes when you're a one-woman protester, like out on the street just screaming, is like, all we need are numbers, all we need are numbers, we need more numbers, we need more numbers, and you saw it up there, like we had the numbers, folks had the numbers, and I know Standing Rock's here tonight, scattered around, and I see a few of them. And so it's really frustrating for me. Sometimes I just want to, sometimes I do scream when I'm alone, because we have the numbers, and what happened? I don't know why we didn't stop that. I don't know how we couldn't have stopped that pipeline. And so I'm gonna have to be, like, this is a time then to be self-critical as a movement and say, what happened there? Because we should have had that, you know, and we had camps in Iowa, we had over 500 people arrested via like civil disobedience campaigns throughout Iowa. We had an encampment on the Mississippi River that Ruby and I were a part of. We did lockdowns. I know there are lockdowners here tonight who we worked with on the Mississippi River. You know, we barricaded roads. Lots of people went to jail, and ultimately, like, what I want to like say to folks who are embracing these methods is like, it was a natural progression for Ruby and I, because you get onto a construction site and you lock onto a piece of machinery and it shuts down, and that's like the best sound that you can ever hear, is that machinery shutting down. And it takes the authorities to get called and be there and have you out of there. Probably about the longest one I held was about 4 hours, and then the machinery's back up and running. And so you're sitting in a jail cell at that point, and you're saying, geez, you know, I did do something today, I did accomplish something, those machines powered down. But you come back out of jail that next day, or a couple days, or 10 days later, however long you're in there, and that machinery is just back up and running, and they're running 24 hours a day at just one site, one site of thousands of sites along the entirety of the pipe. And you think, this isn't enough. Me shutting down one site for 4 hours, one machine for 4 hours is not enough. It's not going to stop this project. And furthermore, eventually we lost that site. You know, at the Mississippi River, they were boring under the Mississippi River, and they did the pullback, and then they started putting dirt back up over and closing everything off, and it was done. The project was seeming like we were losing that battle. And so what do you do then when there's no more machinery left to lock onto? What do you do when there's no more roads left to barricade because there are no more active construction sites? What do you do at that point? You have to step back and look at things creatively and ask yourself, like, did I do enough? Did I really want this pipeline stopped? No, I mean, no, because it's not stopped. And so I'm not suggesting that all y'all do things just like Ruby and I did, but I really do hope that each individual in here who really wants this next pipeline to stop, really evaluate your commitment and evaluate, like, you know, we've lost so much already. Like, how much do we have at stake? We have a lot at stake if we continue to let these pipelines go into the ground and the oil continue to flow. And so one of the things that Ruby and I do individually and have done for the large majority of our adult lives is really, if you don't know how to stop this pipeline, it's inside you. You know, we have so much knowledge inside of us, and we have so much power and magic which exists inside of us. So take that time that you need to take. Walk away from your computers and your laptops and even the camp if you need to, and go climb up a mountain and sit up there, because our mother lives with us and she has the knowledge that she wants to give us, and that's our earth, our Mother Earth. And go up there and sit on that mountaintop, because she has a story to tell you. And it's one that we need, and we need to know in order to stop this destruction and this desecration. So yeah, I guess I want to convey to folks who are in the early stages, at least in the state of Minnesota, the way I understand it, I guess it's closing in around you is what I hear from all sides. This line 3. Consider property destruction as a viable role. That's all.
to go off of that, I think I believe that it's common sense. You know, you see a bulldozer, you know what it does. You know it's not going to do a damn bit of good. So it's common sense. And I think the thing that prevents us acting on that common sense is fear. And I dealt with that a lot. I'll tell you a little bit that after we lost the Skunk River to the Dakota Access Pipeline in Iowa, that's a river in Iowa, we had a lockdown there, we blockaded the road, you know, we did that narrative, and we lost this waterway. And so I was really critical of myself, because that's really not good enough when life is at stake. So I evaluated, and it was common sense, burn the machinery. Okay, Ruby, you're asking me to commit arson. You know, that's that. I don't even know what that means. I don't know like the etymology of that word. I know it's a bad one though. I know the government tells me it's a bad one. I know that it's a felony. I know that they'll throw me in a cage for it. But I know that it's the right thing to do. Because those things are used constantly on different levels for you not to do the right thing. And I decided then and there, I'm not going to choose fear. Instead, I'm going to pierce through that and I'm going to do the right thing, regardless of the consequences. And guess what? We didn't get caught. We didn't get caught because another part of this oppression is that they think that they're watching us now. Hello, I don't care. And that's the thing, is that we have to stop caring about supporting the system. So the cages, the felonies, those fancy words, they are used to keep you in your seat in front of your screen, liking whatever, to feel that you're informed and, you know, maybe even overwhelmed, distraught, depressed, oppressed. None of that stuff matters because, you know, flesh and bone matter. Water matters. All this other stuff is bullshit. And the sooner we walk away from it, the better we all will be, truly. And that is part of the propaganda that they teach of like being an upright citizen. Well, I'm supposed to defend my home. I'm supposed to defend my children, truly. So what does that mean, really? That means sacrifice. That means taking a stand and being defiant to oppression. So I do encourage you to spend time alone and figure out where your values are. And identify your fear. Not be afraid of it. Identify it, embrace it, and go through it. And get to the other side, because you will realize how powerful you are, how creative you are, how intelligent, how capable you are to do things that are right, make a difference, all of that. It's important. I see, you know, Canada just bumped up on the list of the deforestation. Yeah. So now the Amazon is number 2. They're coming for the last of everything, folks. And that's scary. And it's scary that I fear that we are not learning from the defeats that we've had. We need to figure this stuff out. We need to be critical of ourselves, critical of others in loving spaces so that we can move forward individually with groups and be effective change makers in order so that kids can actually be kids, so that they can actually drink from the rivers. Like, you know, I heard that y'all can drink from your lakes up here. That's awesome. I'm from Arizona. We can't do that over there. Can't do that in Iowa at all. So this is really important, especially since it's a clean water source. And I encourage you all to delve in to that fear and come out the other side, because I guarantee you, you will be more free, more free, more free. I'm looking at centuries in prison and I feel more free. I know that's like, what? But seriously, I'm not fearful. And now I'm not controlled, you know? That's huge. So. What do you want us to talk about?
Yeah, we can talk about anything.
All right.
All right, so,
Do you have a question?
I have a question, yes, I have a question.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. We give people a choice. They have data collection options to legally collect data to fight this environmental destruction in court, or do you want to see people die? Because the thing is, what you did, honestly, is very risky, not just for this country, but other people, like in part of the world, like say Kabul, where they bombed, you know, Daesh and Taliban bombed, suicide bombed General Mad Dog Mathis. And the thing is that I fear, very greatly I fear, that if you push the idea of arsons, push the idea of monkey wrenching and property destruction, that looks a lot like terrorism, my friends. And my concern, I believe it acts like, you go to Mecca and sees everybody, no skin color. It becomes like poor people's campaign of Dr.
What
King.
is your
Yeah.
question?
My question is, what are you gonna fucking do to prevent terrorism in this country?
Let's hear your answer, please.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Terrorism. So, yeah, I think you bring up a really good point. And it's been asked before. I think that people don't see much of a separation between property destruction and violence. So I think what I'm hearing from you is that you perceive what the acts that I've committed and the acts that I've claimed responsibility for are violent inherently. And I would argue that that's why I think that things done need to be done and conducted in a correct spirit. When you do so, you are protected and you are acting correctly. And so that's why I'm referring to the mountaintop. That's why I'm referring to the reflection. I'm a very spiritually centered person. I encourage people to seek out that relationship with Creator, whatever Creator that is for you. I think it's one universal love, but however you perceive that, and I think that will prevent any kind of series of escalation which might occur, rendering people harmed, rendering these, you know, bombings and people being killed and hurt and maimed. We are a peaceful people. I know that the pipeline fighters, I've met a lot of them, we are inherently peaceful. And I'm not concerned with any tendency that I might have to escalate to violence because I'm not a violent person. I'm not. And I know that in my heart. And I know that Creator knows that. Because I speak to her all the time. So I think you bring up a valid concern that many hold. But I think that's why Ruby and I continually encourage folks to come with a healthy spirit and a full spirit and conduct themselves in a spiritual manner. But Ruby might have something else to say to that.
Yeah. I hear what you're saying. I have not ever experienced the reality that you come from. But I know it was a reality for all of the people that were here before the creation of this nation. And I don't want it to get to that again. And that's why we chose peaceful means. And that's, people have this, like Jess said, they think property destruction is somehow hurting a person, but it's not. And we're fighting these corporations that the state defends, you know. But we are trying to defend life. And we're not promoting violence against anybody. I don't encourage that myself. So, yeah.
Curious why, so you guys never got caught, which is awesome. So what was the, I guess, the point at which you guys decided to stop Sabotage? And was that the same or different from the point at which you decided to go public? And what did that series of decisions look like and what prompted them?
So Sabotage ended when we came to understand that there was oil flowing through the pipe. And of course you cannot take a blowtorch to with oil in it. I mean, for obvious reasons, right? One, that's like personal safety, and then also safety of the earth, because you're creating an oil spill. And like so, and that was very, very disheartening to find out. Because ultimately that meant that we had lost, because up until that point, Ruby and I maintained that we would win. Like, we believed it. It was not these were not symbolic actions. These were not some sort of like, oh, I can sleep at night kind of thing.
Yeah.
If I do this was, we are going to stop this. And so we then endured a long period of grieving, a grieving process, I would call it, thereafter, and began to think creatively and brainstorm about what possibly could be done at this point. And of course you have like models like the valve turners, but that did not seem to necessarily shut down the pipe, you know what I mean? It didn't shut it down. And so the claiming of responsibility came quite a while later, when ultimately was the last act of desperation, because we couldn't move on to a different pipeline. We were still very much focused on this one and thought that at least if people could learn from what we did, then that would have made it at least somewhat worth it, and also maybe continue to maintain focus on the DAPL, because it seemed as though people were like just spreading out to different causes and campaigns, and so we wanted to bring the focus, reel it back in when it felt like it was going away, and in our hearts it wasn't. In our hearts, and I know many people in this room still are holding on to that particular campaign, if you will, and the loss of it, and are grieving similarly.
Yeah, I mean, that pretty much answers it. And then it kind of opens up the door of like, we can still stop this pipeline. But
Do you have any ideas?
yeah.
I can't, I'm honestly just can't think of anything to do.
What would you have done looking back? What would you have done looking back? What would you have done? Maybe one of the top things you're always thinking of. What would you have done better, or what would you have not done? You know, looking back, what would you?
So again, going back to that personal time, like everything was really lined up really well, like for when we acted, and that was just by grace, you know, like. But I personally would have started earlier, before they clear cut, you know, like, but I got on the ball late.
Similarly, I think that's one of the things that I took from Mississippi Stand was the encampment that we had at the Mississippi River, and I think that was one of the main things that I took after the camp disbanded, and we endured an eviction, and then it moved into a caravan kind of situation. But I think that's the number one thing that I, looking back, was like, I never would have started that encampment. I would have just gone and burned it down. I never would have even messed with the camp.
Returning very briefly to the theme of violence, but specifically state violence. I'm curious about what, how you've processed or what your just way of thinking about what happened in Florida with the Sabotage Trail pipeline, where an individual was engaged in an act of industrial sabotage and was murdered by the police. Just kind of in your estimation, where does that put us?
Put us
Not specifically.
as a movement?
Yeah, as a movement, just like how do you process that?
Like they're gonna kill us.
Yeah.
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 They're trying to kill us. They are, yeah,
That
they're
may
trying
be
to
the
mark
case.
us.
It was interesting at Standing Rock to have militarized police there, to have the bore site similar to the bore sites that they have over in the Middle East. Same thing for oil, so like the stuff that we do over there is coming here, and they, like that's always been on the table for them. So
I think it's important too, like I remember sitting around in a circle, I'm not gonna tell you who was in the circle, but anyway, very really cool people. And I remember going around, we were sitting around a campfire one night and we did a go around and everybody in that circle said that they were willing to give their life to stop. And I don't know what that, I don't know, I was one of those people. But so whatever you can make of that, I don't know, but there is definitely a layer of commitment within us, and within all of you and your endeavors that we know that this thing has to stop, this machine has to stop, and we're willing to sacrifice a lot to for the future, for our children, for our children's children, and for life itself. And so I think we all kind of know. That the people in that circle wouldn't have said, "I'm willing to give my life for it," if we weren't recognizing that these people are evil and violent and racist and out to destroy every last little bit of life we have. So I think we recognize it. I think you bring up a good point. We know it, we feel it, and it's bearing down on us. And ultimately, I think that we know that we will continue to act correctly and do the right thing.
I want to say I have like a tremendous respect for what the two of you are alleged to have done, and I think that like we all need to like I'd like to encourage myself and those around me to be bold and seize important moments and take bold action. I do think I want to respectfully, just because, I've been a revolutionary activist for like 16 years, and I've been doing legal work specifically for about 8. And so I just want to like say that there's people that have gone to prison for saying less than you guys have just said here today. And you said some stuff about how people need specific things around like indictments and stuff like that. And I just think it's important to like encourage everybody, if they're considering taking action, to like consult a lawyer as to how these things actually work, so that they understand what's happening and what are like possible or likely consequences. Because it's not all that, and also there's other things like grand jury subpoenas and other ways that people's lives get fucked with. I also want to say that, like, as someone who's for like years now been kind of like the cleanup crew, like I was out at Standing Rock in the fall and winter doing some legal work out there, and it was really, really hard, in large part because there were assumptions around like things just are going to happen and work out, and we don't need to like worry about it. And so I would also just like encourage people to consider like jail support, legal support, court support, the 2 years after like an action happens, even if it's a lockdown or just like a trespass or something like that, that like it is going to stretch on and like cost you. And that's like, if we're talking about building movement that's gonna last beyond like these individual pipeline fights, we have to be able to sustain that energy long term. And right now, what I see is that the legal system is being wielded as a very effective tool to neutralize resistance because people aren't preparing for it, and they're saying, oh, well, I'll do whatever to win this immediate battle in front of me, come what may. And maybe they even lose that battle, but even if they win it, they get hit so hard and knocked so far back that we can't build actually like sustained movements in the long term, which is what we need to not just like stop a pipeline, but stop extractive culture and change the direction that society is moving. We can't just be stopping pipelines, we have to be thinking beyond that, right? And so just like really encourage people to like consider all the tools that the state has to fight back against us, and like set yourself up so that you know, when it's done, you come out ahead, not behind. And both personally and from a movement perspective. So, I'm sorry, I know I was just kind of ranty and not really a question, but I think it's just really important for this.
It is important. Perhaps we did minimalize it a little bit because we tend to not focus so much, but we have put so much energy into forming a just really solid legal team since our claiming. And so yeah, we have Civil Liberties Defense Union. We have Climate Defense Project. We've got 2 great powerhouse federal attorneys on each coast, and then 2 in town. So yeah, a lot of energy has been put towards that. I'm sorry if we like get it over that. And also, I fully expect indictment. Okay, when I said I don't think they have much on us, I really don't think they do. But I fully expect it. So I shouldn't be like, oh, we're pretty. No, it's weighing very heavily on us. So yeah, I think. Sorry if we see the lawyer in the house is like,
I'm
no.
not a lawyer either, you know. I just think it's important that people understand that like how complicated it is and how easy it is for the FBI to put people in prison. Like they have a 99% conviction rate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I'm argumentative. So I totally second what Jess is saying. Like it's very important to have support of your communities and support the movement. Like that's like huge infrastructure that we need to have in place so that we can take care of each other. Absolutely. I believe the reason that they have such a high conviction rate is because people plead out all the time. And the feds, like they're not this omnipresent thing. I'm kind of shutting my dad, who is a lawyer, was like, stop saying this, you're rubbing their nose in it. But they didn't catch us, okay? They're not everywhere all the time. They're few, again, I know it's like totally seemingly impractical, but if you follow your spirit or you follow your heart, whatever you are grounded in yourself as a human being, you're going to be okay. I'm going to be okay even if I do end up in a cage for the rest of my life. I promise you that. It's going to fucking suck, and they need to be abolished. All of it needs to be torn down. We shouldn't be relying in a legal system that is derived from the system that we are already in, and we're all oppressed under. But I'm going to be okay because I'm whole, you know? And we can't break that, so. That's my response.
I mean, but also if you look at like, you know, Leonard Peltier is still in prison. Herman Bell just got beat up by cops in prison. You know, Marius Mason has been in prison, and he didn't go around basically confessing to anything, you know. And I think that while it's true that there's like that pleas happen, I also think it's like not only is it true that a lot of people go to prison. I mean, you essentially have been confessing here in front of us. Maybe some people can get away with it, but it's not just y'all, it's also, and I appreciate what you're doing being here. I think it's actually, you know, some people, I think might be critical of people stepping forward and like claiming something because it's like, it is a confession, and I think that like, there's ways to use that possibly in a strategic fashion that it seems like you're trying to do, and I appreciate that. But it does then take like, this is like then every moment that you're in prison is like also all the prisoner support movement infrastructure that's in place, also then coming, all the legal support infrastructure in place, churning on your case. So just also to keep that in mind, especially if we're talking about how, okay, everyone should go out and replicate this sort of specific sabotage. And I'm not saying they shouldn't. I'm saying like we need to think strategically and include in that a full cost-benefit analysis of all the work that it takes as a movement to support people for decades in prison.
It's a good conversation to have.
Music is by Brian Thavis and Paul Spring. Thanks to the Minneapolis Catholic workers for putting this event on. Over the next couple months, I'm gearing up for phase 3, whatever that may be. I'm thinking about focusing more on food and values, how we define our values through food. I think food is a good faceplate to talk about these issues. If you have any thoughts on that, you know my email, steve@farminggod.com.